The protagonist finds herself on a carriage, heading towards a certain destination. Suddenly, Lena asks if she is suitable to be the daughter-in-law of the Dispenser family, as they had expressed their interest in meeting her. Without hesitation, her mother-in-law assures her that she is indeed suitable. After a few minutes, they finally arrive at their destination. The servants announce their arrival. Lena is surprised by the mansion's incredibly size. Two young men warmly welcome her to the Dispenser family. They point out a young man with captivating blue eyes. Felix, the eldest son of the Dispenser family. It is at this moment that the protagonist realizes that Felix is not only incredibly handsome but also her husband. A few days prior, Roxy, a daughter of the Homewood family, had a heated argument with her father. She boldly claimed that her father was insane for wanting her to marry a viscount. In response, the head of the family, Walter Homewood, handed her some papers. However, Lena, who had just returned from a shopping trip, was unaware of this incident. As she enters the room, her mother bumps into her, causing the butter to spill out of her bag. She greets her mother, but Catherine Homewood questions why she is in the way. Lady Lena's sister finishes reading the papers and remarks that they do not mention anything about the desired qualities of the girl. However, their father supports Lady Lena and reveals that a marriage proposal from Viscount Dispenser has arrived, promising them a substantial amount of money. Despite this, Lady Lena is not fond of the idea. Times have changed, and aristocrats are losing their titles due to financial difficulties. Where there is demand, there is supply, and Viscount Dispenser has presented his proposal. However, titles are not merely a matter of public opinion. They must be earned. True nobility is an inherent quality, and a family that purchases a title with money does not truly fit into society. In the end, they request Lady Lena's hand in marriage for their son. Lena shouts that she refuses to go through with it, no matter how advantageous it may be. There wasn't a single penny in the house, not even enough for a meal, yet, in the end, they just wanted to be rid of her. The Countess declared that they couldn't send Lena there. This surprised the protagonist, who believed her mother simply didn't want her to go. Catherine argued that if her daughter left, they would have to hire a maid. The girl stood by her mother's side, urging her to become even angrier because she didn't want to leave. Walter handed a few papers to his wife and discussed the importance of the letter in great detail. She insisted that no matter the amount, she would refuse, but when she saw the large sum, her mind changed. She gently placed her hands on Lena's cheeks and told her that she should go and solve all her problems there. She asked the girl to be patient, for the sake of the family. At the end of the day, she could. The mother warned her daughter not to be selfish, which upset Lena. In that moment, her mother wondered how she could have given birth to such a heartless child. The Countess instructed her daughter to repay the family who hadn't abandoned her on the streets. If she married, she would atone for her sins and become a respectable woman. The protagonist had longed to hear these words, but she couldn't find true happiness in them. After finishing her speech, Catherine turned away from her daughter and told her to have something to eat first. She asked her older sister where Maurice was, who assured her that he would arrive in time for the meal. She also inquired if she would now have a collection of beautiful dresses. The mother replied with a resounding "of course," adding that there would be shoes and jewelry as well. Meanwhile, on the other side of the door, Lena listened to it all, tears streaming down her face, feeling deeply upset. Lena comes to a realization that she no longer belongs to this family, feeling as though she is forgotten by everyone. A week later, the Dispenser family arrived. Catherine, determined not to succumb to the shallow and deceitful nobility, boldly states that they must be tired after their long journey to their house. Unbeknownst to the protagonist, Maurice is nowhere to be found. Viscountess Evely Dispenser expresses gratitude to the Countess for agreeing to the marriage. Lena catches sight of the Viscountess and contemplates whether or not to bow, but her mother quickly pulls her away. Left alone, the protagonist realizes that her family is merely selling her off to the Dispenser family, and the wedding is nothing more than a formality. She doesn't even know who her husband will be. If she claims that she went along with it because of her sister Roxy's wishes, it would make more sense and avoid angering her sister. Suddenly, Catherine calls Lena, embracing her tightly and instructing her to treat the Viscountess with respect. She advises Lena to lead a decent life, and the protagonist yearns to say something to her mother, but she is urged to leave. The butler takes her suitcase. The girl insists that there is no need for the servant to carry it, as it is light, and swiftly departs, pondering what she had expected from her mother. Evely calls out to the protagonist, and when she asks what is wrong, The Viscountess gives her the choice of traveling by carriage or car. The girl expresses her preference for the carriage, feeling more at ease in it. The woman smiles and agrees, mentioning that she also prefers the classics. Maurice, the eldest son of the home Wood family, rushes out and gazes at the car intently. The young boy approached his father with a curious expression on his face, questioning whether it was truly worth buying one. Meanwhile, the protagonist glanced at her brother and noticed that he hadn't come out to bid her farewell. Felix's gaze then shifted towards Lena, the eldest daughter Roxy. Observed Felix, she couldn't help but wonder if all the men in his family were as handsome. Regardless, she wasn't concerned about it and decided to head back inside the house. There, she found her parents engaged in a joyful banter about the amount of money they had received. Catherine claimed that they had been paid even more than what was promised, while Walter complimented his wife's beauty. On their way home, the boy complained about feeling cramped. His older brother reminded him that he had warned him about this and questioned why he had to go. In response, the boy stated that everyone else was going, and as the youngest in the family, he felt obligated to join. He then asked if Felix should ride in the carriage. The older brother replied that he must have been sent with them because he was as tall as a step. He also mentioned that Felix would frighten Lady Lena. Felix didn't find these words amusing. He looked away, pondering if that was the reason behind the girl's shyness. He found her expressions quite endearing. Upon arriving at the mansion, she was taken aback by its enormous size. The thought of the family's wealth crossed her mind, and she worried about accidentally breaking something. However, she tried to push those thoughts aside. The Viscountess turned to the girl and informed her that everyone was already waiting in the living room, signaling that they should proceed inside. As the protagonist stepped over the threshold, she couldn't help but notice the expensive furnishings. She felt a sense of unease, fearing that she might damage something. Nevertheless, she tried to dismiss such concerns. The Viscount greeted Lady Lena with a warm smile and introduced himself as Alex, the owner of Despencer's mansion. He then pointed towards his son, claiming that he would be Lena's future husband. She notices the boy's striking good looks. Alex proceeds with his narrative, revealing that the blue-eyed boy is Despencer's eldest son from the Despencer family. The girl locks eyes with him briefly, but quickly averts her gaze, clearly filled with fear. Felix's expression darkens slightly in response. The father places a comforting hand on his son's shoulder and asks if he can handle it. Felix begins to introduce each member of the family, starting with Eden, the second oldest child, and ending with Joffrey, the youngest. Just as the boy is about to introduce his mother, she interrupts him and insists on being called Evely. She abruptly declares that their introduction is over and invites her to take a seat for the entire family gathering. Everyone gathers around the table, but the girl can't help but feel the weight of their stares, making her incredibly uncomfortable. The Viscountess, sensing her unease, silently instructs her family not to look at the girl. She empathizes, understanding that Lena must be just as exhausted as they are. The Viscountess kindly suggests that they discuss the family matters later and proposes focusing on the upcoming marriage ceremony instead. The protagonist agrees, and Evely announces that they will celebrate it in 2 years. But in the meantime, Lena can consider herself part of the family. Lena is convinced that this is a test and if the girl doesn't fulfill her duties, she will be kicked out of the mansion. Determined, she resolves to work even harder. As they contemplate their relationship, Lena apologizes and decides to retreat to her room. Just as she gets up from the couch and leaves the room, the eldest son of the family is immediately outraged, claiming that it's taking too long. His mother advises him not to jump to conclusions, as he might not like Lena. Confused, Felix questions his mother's statement and wonders if he will truly love her. Evely, accepting the wedding as a means to keep Lena away from her family, doesn't want the ceremony to proceed until Lena has fallen in love with Felix. The Viscountess confirms that Lena was not here by choice, but rather her family was paid a ransom for her. Felix, sitting on the couch, interrupts the conversation, urging his mother not to discuss it so directly. Evely ponders if her son is also eager to rush things. She reminisces about the first time she saw the girl with her golden hair and bright smile, expressing her desire to adopt her. Another woman revealed that the girl was Lena Homewood and that she would be visiting her orphanage. Evely apologizes for her earlier rudeness and acknowledges the girl's beautiful smile. She hopes that Lena can find happiness. She silently urges her son to win the girl's heart, hoping he will understand her unspoken request. However, he seems confused and wonders if Lena even remembers him. The Viscount feels a deep disappointment as he realizes that only his wife can communicate with Lena, and he longs to befriend her as well. In his possession, he holds a note where he asks the girl if she would prefer to call him father or daddy. In the dead of night, the girl awakens from her slumber. As she steps out of bed, she ponders the time and slips on her house slippers. Perplexed by the absence of the alarm clock's ring, she realizes that her mother will soon unleash her wrath. Standing in the middle of the room, she suddenly comprehends that this unfamiliar place is not her home. It appears that for the first time since she was 12, Lena has slept for an extended period. Realizing the urgency, she hurries towards the kitchen. Upon entering, one of the workers greets Lena with astonishment, questioning why she is present. The other workers are equally puzzled, unaware of her identity. The woman explains that she is the same girl the gentleman had mentioned, recently arriving at his mansion. The workers gather around Lena, each one introducing themselves. Among them, a cook named Mari asks if something is amiss due to the girl's arrival. Eager to be of use, Lena asks if there is anything she should do. The lady enthusiastically lists her skills, including bread making, cooking, and cleaning. The worker is taken aback by these words and assures Lena that she doesn't need to do anything in the kitchen. Frustration builds within Lena, fearing that if she remains idle, she will be cast out. She dreads returning to her old family, where nobody cherished her. The girl swiftly grabs her apron and exclaims that she will find something to do. The protagonist skillfully prepares all the ingredients and begins cooking with her tiny hands. She carefully takes a bowl and cracks some eggs into it, then adds all the other ingredients to prepare a delicious breakfast. When it's time for dinner, Lena stands beside the table. The Viscount curiously asks her why she's standing there, and Felix brings a chair for the protagonist, inviting her to sit next to him. This is something the protagonist is not accustomed to. She believes that if they offer her to eat together, she cannot refuse. The boy kindly asks if the girl wants milk or tea, and what she prefers. Lena requests milk, and Felix, with a slight blush on his cheeks, agrees. Lena graciously thanks him. Alex glances at the table and notices a new dish. He inquires about it and the protagonist informs him that she made it, and if the Viscount doesn't want to eat it, it's fine. The whole family eagerly grabs their forks. The father realizes that he's the first one to grab a fork and starts celebrating his victory, but his plans are thwarted when the youngest son sticks a fork into the plate. He compliments Lena, saying that the dish is delicious. The protagonist listens to this with a warm smile on her face and mentions that next time she will cook for everyone, but the Viscount advises her against it. Lena reminisces about her brother Maurice, who also gets tired of his food and always eats dishes more delicious than his omelette every day. Alex claims that they didn't bring the girl here to prepare breakfast for them, and she doesn't have to do it if she doesn't want to. However, the Viscount expresses his desire for Lena to cook a dish for his birthday, and he asks her if she can. The youngest son excitedly shouts that he wants it that way too. Eden remarks that his brother always uses his position as the youngest son of the family to his advantage. Lena's face lights up with excitement upon hearing those words. A mixture of joy and tears glisten in his golden lashes. Alex, wanting to know more, asks his son about his progress with the Duke of Cornwall. However, he responds coldly, stating that it's too early to share any details. The Viscount expresses his own interest in the trial, to which Felix assures him that if anything goes wrong, he will inform his father. As Alex notices his son's reaction, and questions if Eden is also preparing for something. Felix confirms this and glances at the empty plate, feeling frustrated that his wife made breakfast but Lena hasn't even taken a bite. Meanwhile, she sits silently, observing everything. The Viscountess speaks to Joffrey, mentioning his upcoming first day of school. This news doesn't bring much happiness to him, who covers his ears with his hands and expresses his annoyance, asking how much more they can talk about it. The protagonist, feeling left out, sits at the table and wonders if she'll ever be able to join in their conversations. The Viscountess interrupts her thoughts and asks Lena if she has eaten. She replies affirmatively, and she suggests that he rest for a while. Lena briefly inquires about the progress of the cleaning, but then dismisses it, saying it's fine. Just as the girl is about to leave the room, she grabs the doorknob, contemplating her exit. Evely surprises her by asking if she would like to meet for a cup of tea during lunchtime. Lena is taken aback by the unexpected invitation, but after a moment, she responds positively with a smile and bids her farewell with a graceful bow. Alex, feeling a sense of abandonment, questions what is wrong, but his wife explains that it's a strictly female gathering. The Viscountess notices her husband's recent grumpiness and continues her conversation, mentioning her usual tea ceremonies. As she realizes that he is the first one to mention welcoming her into the family, she understands that there is nothing wrong with her desire to have a daughter. The Viscount, with tears in his eyes, pleads with her. The wife thinks that the older he gets, the more he behaves like a child. Lena walks down the hallway. The maid kindly informs her about the location of the ladies' bathroom and other rooms. The protagonist is amazed by the abundance of beautiful objects and the well-decorated rooms in the mansion. The maid admits that she hasn't introduced herself yet and reveals her name as Jane. She assures the protagonist that she will take care of the ladies' living room and requests to be called immediately if anything goes wrong. The protagonist reassures her that there is no need to worry. However, the maid fails to comprehend what her mistress is talking about. Understanding that it is her job, Lena excitedly states that she will undoubtedly turn to Jane if she needs anything. Suddenly, there is a knock on the Viscountess's door, and it turns out to be Lady Evely. She asks the girl to come in and apologizes, mentioning that there are still some things to fix. She advises the protagonist to prioritize taking care of herself. Curious, she asks if she likes her room. The Viscountess tried her best to please her but is unsure about what is fashionable among young women. She suggests that Layla can decorate her room herself. In response, the protagonist expresses her liking for everything, although she finds the costume a little strange. Evely, confused, suggests that there might be some mistake. She ponders for a moment, contemplating the girl's suggestion of having a closet instead of a cupboard. However, she acknowledges that there is limited space for a closet, interrupts and clarifies that her concern lies not in the lack of a closet, but rather in the overwhelming amount of items within it, as if it belonged to someone else entirely. Lena finds those items quite appealing and expresses her desire to wear them for a while. The Viscountess chuckles at her response and reveals that they are gifts from various individuals, including Alex, Felix, and Etienne. There are elegant dresses, beautiful bags, and exquisite jewelry, all carefully chosen. Lena expresses her gratitude to the Evely, who mentions that they were preparing together for her arrival. Lena thanks Evely once again and affectionately calls her mother. Evely becomes excited and warmly smiles, her cheeks slightly blushing. She asks if Lena would like to discuss the tea ceremony. Overwhelmed with emotion, Lena almost sheds tears, realizing that she is truly welcomed here. The Viscountess inquires if Lena's intention was to engage in the tea ceremony. She acknowledges that times have changed, and now even girls need to learn to live independently. Lena remembers that she has a wedding in 2 years, and wonders if she will be cast aside after that or if her new mother means for her to start preparing now to support herself, even if they don't want her in their mansion. The two girls continue their conversation, with Evely asking if Lena has studied anything. Lena admits that she has only studied the basics of history. The lady responds by sharing her personal interest in philosophy and psychology, suggesting that it would be nice for Lena to learn drawing or play a musical instrument. The Viscountess already envisions accompanying the girl to museums and theaters, immersing themselves in the arts. Together, the woman and her daughter sat in the room, engaged in conversation. However, the woman noticed a change in Lena's expression, a darkness that clouded her face. Concerned, she reassured her daughter that she didn't have to study if she didn't want to. All she wanted was for Lena to have a basic understanding of things. The woman knew that the Viscountess, their family's enemy, would make life difficult for Lena if she ventured into society without an education. She wanted to protect her daughter from abuse and harassment. Evely made it clear that she wasn't asking Lena to make a decision right away. Instead, she wanted her to gain experience and discover something she truly enjoyed. Lena agreed, understanding the importance of her mother's words. Sensing her daughter's fatigue, the woman suggested ending the tea ceremony and advised Lena to go home and rest. Lena accepted the suggestion gracefully, bidding farewell to Evely with a bow before leaving the room. Left alone, the Viscountess contemplated the girl's situation, empathizing with her pain. She had been observing Lena for a while now, wanting to ensure her comfort. Evely believed that the best course of action would be to have a conversation with the girl. Lena retreated to her room, sinking onto her bed, deep in thought. Memories of her family flooded her mind. Roxy with her private teacher, Maurice attending a real school. Lena couldn't help but feel a pang of envy, realizing that she only knew how to read. Recalling her mother's words about the girl she wanted to become on their family's farm, Lena wondered if spending her free time reading books would be a better use of her time. Even if she studied, could she ever catch up? As she pondered, an image of Roxy playing the piano in black lace gloves appeared before her eyes. The desire to learn to play the instrument ignited within her. The maid interrupted her thoughts, announcing that it was time for dinner, but Lena remained silent, her face flushed with contemplation as she lay in bed. The maid rushes into the dining room, breathless, to deliver the news that Lady Lena is gravely ill. The mother, pale with worry, immediately instructs Joshua to be summoned. When the doctor arrives, he carefully examines the girl, prompting the Viscountess to blame herself for putting too much pressure on Lena. Tears streaming down her face, she insists that the girl should not be burdened with anything. Joshua, now a little bewildered, hastily leaves his own home and rushes over, interrupted in the middle of his dinner. The servant informs him that the young woman's condition is critical, and the doctor suspects she may need to be moved to another location. As he departs, the servant casually asks if he has been informed about Felix's upcoming wedding. Joshua realizes that the girl is Felix's fiancée, although they are only engaged. It seems that no one had thought to call the doctor for the wedding. When he arrives at their residence, he is greeted with a mere glance and a dismissive gesture, as if he were an inconvenience. The doctor observes the couple and senses that they have been in this state for hours. Despite his reassurances that it is just a common cold, the Viscountess weeps, recalling that they hadn't shed a tear even when Eden had measles. The doctor informs the Viscountess that Lena's weight and skin condition indicate a lack of proper nutrition. He advises her to administer the prescribed medication and supplements, which will be delivered the following day. Reiterating that it is indeed just a cold and that the family need not worry, Joshua returns home late at night. Meanwhile, Felix enters the Lena's room, pulls up a chair beside her bed, and takes a seat. As he gazes at her sleeping form, memories of their time together 4 years ago in the orphanage flood his mind. Two boys, desperately searching for their brother, wandered through the forest, calling out his name. Suddenly, they stumbled upon their brother, accompanied by a lady with golden hair. As she carefully applied plasters to the boy's wound, he expressed his gratitude and reassured him that everything would be all right. Jeffrey thanked the main character, and the two boys acknowledged that they owed the girl a favor. Curious, she asked if they knew the injured boy. Eden replied affirmatively, explaining that they were volunteers at the daycare center and had been searching for him for quite some time. The girl modestly brushed off their praise. They all ended up getting lost, but luckily, Lena offered to lead them back to the orphanage. The girl skillfully tended to the wound, assuring the boy that he was now completely healed. He glanced at the wound and nonchalantly remarked that he no longer cared. Hurt by the incident, Lena warned Jeffrey to be cautious when venturing into the forest with the children in the future, as there were many rocks and the possibility of encountering snakes if they strayed too far. The boy promised to be more careful from now on. Suddenly, a trio of children burst out of another room, joyfully running towards Lena and inviting her to play with them. She happily accepted, promising to return after preparing the medicine. One of the children approached Jeffrey and asked if he wanted to play, and soon enough, all the children were happily engaged in play. Felix, feeling a bit awkward, was approached by one of the boys who encouraged him to join in as well. Although Felix didn't recall promising to help Lena, he didn't mind. The main character dampened a towel and placed it on the boy's forehead, explaining that it would help reduce his fever and make him feel better soon. The boy couldn't comprehend how Lena had sensed his illness. The girl claimed that one can always detect when someone is hiding pain. She also noticed that Felix's cheeks were warmer than usual. But Lena assured him that he would feel better after half an hour of rest. She also assured the boy not to worry because she would inform the others that they had resolved the children's medications together. From the courtyard, they started calling for Lena, asking if she would come. The protagonist replied that she would wake up Felix in half an hour and wished him sweet dreams. The boy expressed his gratitude to Lena. He felt a tickling sensation. Then something unexpected happened to the girl. Felix visited the orphanage multiple times, sometimes pretending to be a sponsor or offering his services, and miraculously, he always found his way back to the place. It took quite some time before he could see the Lena again. Jeffrey was overjoyed to see her. However, too much time had passed, and the protagonist didn't recognize them at first. Both boys were deeply saddened, but the younger brother quickly dismissed the gloomy thoughts, stating that it was all right because if Lena didn't recognize him, it meant he had grown up. He argued that it was a good thing the girl didn't remember those moments when he had cried like a baby. To be honest, Felix felt disappointed, but Lena didn't remember him, but her kindness towards him remained unchanged. The boy vowed to do everything in his power to show his gratitude. It's astonishing to think that he hadn't even realized Lena was sick. Felix heard a murmur and turned towards the girl's bed. She was lying there, blushing, as if she had just woken up. As she awakens, the girl immediately notices a throbbing pain in her head, reminding her that something is not right. This is the first time she has ever experienced such discomfort, as she has never had a cold before. Curiosity takes hold of her, and she begins to scan the room, only to spot Felix sitting beside her. Intrigued, she wonders how long he has been there and, more importantly, why her stomach is growling. Just as she ponders these questions, Felix, the girl's future husband, places his hand gently on her forehead to check for any signs of fever. Thankfully, the fever has subsided. This small act of care and concern catches Lena off guard, leaving her feeling slightly embarrassed. Sensing her hunger, Felix asked if she'd like something to eat, offering to fetch something from the kitchen. Although she says it's not necessary, he's already on his way out the door. Leaving her alone in the room, she realizes that Felix will return swiftly. As she gets up, she noticed that her clothes are smelly, causing her to think that she had sweat a lot while sleeping. Meanwhile, Felix contemplates what would be the best thing to bring for his future wife. Perhaps a comforting glass of warm milk or a soothing cup of hot tea would do the trick. Lost in his thoughts, he decides it would be wise to ask the girl herself about her preference. However, when he opens the door to the room, he is surprised to find it empty. His eyes search the room, only to catch sight of the girl attempting to change her clothes. Startled by Felix's sudden return, she is taken aback when a piercing scream echoes through the air. It is Felix, but she cannot fathom why he is screaming in such a manner. His brothers rush to his side, scolding him for his outburst. Eden, one of the brothers, inquires about his actions, to which Felix confesses that he had been caught in an embarrassing situation. The younger siblings, filled with curiosity, question him further, wondering if he truly did what he claimed and if he is a pervert. The doctor arrives at the mansion early in the morning and warns the girl about the potential burning sensation from the injection. He advises her to be patient for a while, even though she must always carry the medication with her. The doctor sweetly speaks to the girl, treating her as if she were a child. The girl assures him that she is fine, but the doctor insists on keeping an eye on her for a while longer. Suddenly, Viscountess enters the room and engages Lena in a game, asking if she is bored sitting there. The Viscountess explains that she prepared some lemon juice for the girl, as vitamin C is beneficial for the body. Evely asks if she can stay with Lena, to which the doctor agrees but advises against it for too long, as she hasn't fully recovered yet. The protagonist then goes to her mother's study, where they enjoy a cup of tea together. The girl expresses her fondness for tea and mentions that the lemon tastes sweet. The Viscountess reveals that she added honey to make it sweeter. Eden advises Lena to be careful and notices that she looks better today. The little brother apologizes for not being more careful and promises to protect her so that she doesn't regret joining their family. The mother reassures Lena that she doesn't need to do anything. However, the protagonist can't sit still when everyone is so concerned about her. Lena asks the mother about something she mentioned the other day, and the Viscountess inquires if she is referring to her studies. The girl confirms that she will do everything possible to catch up and feels ashamed for not knowing anything. She wants to try her best and be proud of herself in the future. The Viscountess smiles and expresses her gratitude towards Lena. In Flatty, Felix is currently seated with a glass of wine, having not returned home since that day. Unbeknownst to him, the guy who entered without knocking was on business, but Felix will have to apologize to Lena when he gets back. The guy is taken aback when approached by his friend, who asks when he'll be back. Immediately, the boy recognizes the voice as Lloyd Cornwell. The Duke informs Felix that he has discovered his friend had to spend a significant amount of money. Felix believes that rumors spread quickly, and it would be strange if they didn't. After such a large purchase, it's only natural to enjoy the money earned from selling his daughter to the Viscount. However, the financial status of these aristocrats has always been on the brink of bankruptcy, as the family members are known for their greed, stupidity, and avarice, except for Maurice Homewood, the eldest son, who is considered the stupidest of them all. The only one worth paying attention to is Roxy Homewood, who is always stunning but treats Lena with disdain and lacks any pity for her. The average person knows very little about all the debutantes. The Duke asks his friend if the amount spent was too much for the dispensers. He inquires if Felix regrets it and if anything has happened. Felix responds that he is a man and that the Viscount says it's a way to go blind. The Duke remarks that Felix enjoys it because he knows him well. Lloyd asks if he understood correctly that Felix won't discuss his wife before the boy arrived. The Duke had heard a rumor that Felix had left his job. Felix claims to have no idea what his friend is talking about, but the Duke insists that he will find out unless Felix tells him. He asks if Felix minds, and Felix is not pleased to hear those words. Suddenly, a boy with long white hair approaches from behind and asks what the Duke is going to find out. And if he stops bothering Felix, it would be a relief. Aaron Haig is ecstatic about the arrival of a dear friend. The guy with the striking white hair playfully asks if he's running late. It turns out to be Count Aaron, the boy who has been following Lloyd since their days at the Royal Academy. Felix remembers that it was during those days that his life truly began, surrounded by friends. As they continue their conversation, one of them speculates that if the rumors are indeed coming from the Earl of Homewood, it would be quite peculiar. The other friend chimes in, stating that the incomparable Felix should embrace his status as a handsome, well-bred, educated, and talented head of the first department at the Academy, even if he's not a Viscount. Though he may appear intimidating at first glance, Felix is actually a diligent and studious young man. If all the daughters in the world knew about him, there would be an ocean of tears shed. Felix doesn't quite grasp what his friends are saying, but they continue to laugh and tease, asking if he'll beat them up at the party. Feeling that the two have much to discuss, Felix suggests it would be best for him to leave. The Duke proposes they talk about work and questions if Felix is truly leaving. A shadow of disappointment crosses his face, realizing that they may not be as close as he thought. Count Aaron reassures him that nothing has changed between them since childhood, and they'll catch up at the party. As Felix arrives at the party, he realizes that a significant amount of time has passed. Lena, the protagonist, is in the mansion, and he decides to congratulate her on her beautiful painting this time. When he asks if it's true, her mother confirms and expresses her desire to have the painting as well. The girl mentions that the autumn landscape also looks stunning. She asks if Lena will show her mother the study, hoping that her drawings will improve even further. While the lady senses that Lena and Felix may have had a disagreement, she curiously asks what happened between them. Felix went to flat tea and hasn't returned yet, which means they can't announce their engagement if that's the case. The main character reflects on recent events and responds by stating that after that day. Evely mentions that although the engagement is not yet official, she has taken on the role of a steward, solidifying her place within her family. Encouraged by these words, the protagonist no longer feels tied to the Homewood family. Later on, the Countess of Homewood and her daughter arrive at Despencer Manor. The Viscountess warmly greets them, expressing her delight at their visit. Catherine insists that she should have been the one to welcome them. The Countess is so overwhelmed by their hospitality that she is at a loss. Evely mentions that the Countess of Homewood has also come to see Lena, inquiring if they have decided to visit her daughter on their way to the capital. Catherine confirms this, but notices her daughter's absence and questions her whereabouts. The Viscountess reassures her that Lena is getting ready for the festival and will be joining them shortly. Roxy grins, suspecting that Lena is intentionally avoiding them. With spring in full bloom, the lack of an invitation hints that the wedding is off the table. Lena seems to be putting on a facade to conceal her true nature, but who will believe it? The protagonist's sister eagerly anticipates seeing how much the once timid girl has transformed from her days of cleaning the house. Moments later, Lena emerges before the guests in a stunning pink dress. The mother catches sight of her daughter and is so taken aback that she nearly chokes on her tea, struggling to recognize her own daughter. As Lena enters the room, she greets her sister and asks how everyone is doing. However, her sister interrupts her, proudly announcing her arrival just in time. With a pointed finger, she demands that Lena fill her cup with milk. Lena can't help but think of herself as the kitchen maid. Roxy refuses to accept that Lena is no longer a maid and argues that since the girl has always done it, she should have no problem doing it now. The Viscountess intervenes, saying it's not necessary and that Roxy can ask the servant when she arrives, if she wants. Lena's heart fills with excitement as she finally understands what it feels like to be loved and protected by someone. However, her older sister smirks, thinking that no matter how Lena looks, the girl will always be at her service. She boldly voices her thoughts, much to Catherine's surprise. Roxy, unashamed, walks out into the hallway without uttering a word. Meanwhile, as Roxy walks down the hallway lost in her own thoughts, She admires the beautifully decorated house and wonders what hidden secrets it holds. Approaching Jane, she instructs her to take her to the room of the Lena. Jane hesitates, explaining that even though Roxy is a guest, it's a bit difficult to enter her room. Ignoring the maid's warning, Roxy slaps her without hesitation, scolding her for not knowing her obligations. She then turns Jane, questioning her audacity and warning her not to defy her again. Jane obediently leads Roxy to her mistress's room, where Roxy asks if they've arrived at the correct room. To her surprise, the room is not what she had imagined. Instead of finding Lena living like a gray mouse in a box, she sees that Lena has even hung the curtains. She begins to inspect the clothes closet. The girl pulls out a dress and anxiously wonders if everything was purchased for her. Her gaze shifts to the top drawer of the table, prompting Roxy to investigate. She pushes it aside and uncovers a lovely box. Upon opening it, she smirks, obviously hitting the jackpot. The Viscountess feels a bit weary and declares that they are certainly not the kind of guests she wishes to entertain again. Lena expresses gratitude towards her mother, mentioning that they were able to see them off without any trouble. Her sister rides in the carriage with the stolen jewels. Upon entering her room, Lena sits at the table. She decides to search the drawer where the necklace and earrings should be, only to find them missing. She calls for Jane, inquiring if she cleaned the room the previous day. The maid explains that Mistress Evely instructed her not to disturb her. Lena questions if someone entered her room, prompting the maid to kneel and earnestly beg for forgiveness, revealing that a guest had requested entry the day before. Lena ponders the identity of the guest and instructs her maid to keep it a secret. The protagonist recalls Jane's swollen cheek. Roxy must have struck her for disobedience. Much like she did with Lena, Lena is completely lost and doesn't know what to do or how to react. Tears stream down her face as she pleads for forgiveness from Evely. After all, she had entrusted her with the family heirloom. Lena should have been more cautious. She should have known that her sister was capable of something like this. The protagonist wonders what will happen if she can't find the necklace and earrings. Suddenly, Eden approaches her and offers her his handkerchief. Lena wipes her tears with her sleeve, at a loss for words. But Eden understands everything and tells her that she must be feeling alone in this situation. Lena wants to deny it, but Eden reassures her that it's okay if she doesn't want to talk about it. Everyone has days when they just want to cry, and today seems to be one of those days for Lena. So there's nothing wrong with that. Lena starts crying again, but this time it's tears of joy. She doesn't even realize that her tears are flowing once more. Grateful for Eden's support, she thanks him, feeling a little better. She promises to wash the handkerchief and return it to him. Then, Lena asks Eden if he knows what a blessed blue is, claiming that she lost it today. Eden is shocked by the news, as it is a precious family heirloom. Lena continues her story, revealing that her sister probably took it. She remembers how Roxy always takes things for herself if she likes them. When their grandmother gave Lena a bracelet with beautiful green stones, Roxy took it off her wrist without hesitation. Even when Lena begged her sister to give it back, Roxy just smiled maliciously. After a moment of hesitation, she shrugs her shoulders and says that she has to find the little blue pendant. Lena admits that she doesn't know if the Homewoods will allow her into their house, but even if she asks Roxy directly about the necklace, she knows her older sister won't return it. It's just in her nature. Eden suggests that they go see her sister together. Lena doesn't need to travel far. They can meet the main character at a festival in the capital. She blushes at the thought of the festival and almost heads back to her empty mansion. Lena envisions herself standing alone at the entrance. The boy suggests they go together to search for the blue jewel. He winks at her and mentions that even though he's not Felix, he's there to help. Eden takes Layla's hand and assures her that she can always confide in him. She promises to be there for Lena, urging her not to cry alone and reminding her that they are like family. Lena blushes at this and agrees. Later that night, the boy sits at his desk, writing a letter by lamplight. Felix receives a letter from Eden, promising to help Lena as agreed, but warning that her future husband might change within 2 years. This upsets Felix, and his friend remarks that his brother has a point. Felix bangs the table in frustration, wondering if he understands the situation. The Duke advises him to calm down, emphasizing that avoidance is not the solution. He sarcastically suggests that Felix can continue sulking, but if he wants to see his future wife, he needs to leave his hideout. Lena enters the carriage with a serious expression, while Eden sits across from her, asking if she's feeling all right as she appears pale. The boy suggests slowing down if it's due to the carriage ride. Lena expresses her concern, assuring herself that she will eventually discover the sacred blue. In her thoughts, she humbly asks for forgiveness from Evely. She has purposely avoided her mother during this time. Eden inquires if the girl plans to engage in a pleasant conversation with her sister, suggesting that she could use a few interesting topics. Lena is puzzled by his remark and questions if he is offering to confront Roxy. The guy responds, emphasizing that he should be aware of who he is dealing with, and proceeds to demonstrate the technique. He explains that one must clench their palm into a fist and channel all their strength into it. Lena attempts to mimic the boy's actions, and Eden remarks that she is much stronger than she thinks. The carriage shakes, catching their attention, and the driver asks if the lady and the Eden are all right. Eden holds Lena's hand and reassures him that everything is fine. In a hushed tone, she warns Lena to be cautious as the shaking could cause harm. The protagonist apologizes softly, and the boy releases her hand. The girl tries to calm herself down as her face turns slightly red. Eden suggests that they gaze out the window. It appears they have arrived just in time, as the street is bustling with people. The party is in full swing, and as the girl gazes outside, she exclaims how magnificent the festival is. The boy sighs with relief and wonders if his brother has also arrived. Felix attempts to appear intimidating, but he poses no threat yet. Eden taps on the carriage wall and requests the coachman to stop. Lena asks if they should disembark here instead of going to the house. Eden interjects, stating that they have not only arrived at the central square but also the palace square. He guides the protagonist out of the carriage, holding her hand gently. He reassures her, telling her not to be afraid. It had been about a month since she last spoke to Felix, and it might feel awkward to talk to him after such a long silence. The boy notices Lena's reaction and instinctively puts his arm around her shoulder, comforting her. He tells her not to think about anything else and that he will wait for her here. They bid farewell. Eden seems lost in his thoughts. He can't help but notice that the girl appears more upset than excited about the news. The boy wonders what might have happened between her and her brother, and if Lena harbored any ill feelings towards Felix in the past. As they arrive at the palace, the protagonist spots her sister engaged in conversation with a guy. Ignoring her sister, she gathers her strength and approaches Roxy. Placing her hand on her sister's shoulder, she calls out her name. She is determined that Roxy must return what she has stolen, as she deeply cares for the people around her. The bystanders questions who the girl next to her is. Roxy shakes off Lena's hand and asks if she has completely lost her mind. Roxy grabs the protagonist's hand and starts pulling her away, refusing to give back what rightfully belongs to her. Roxy doesn't feel guilty at all. She starts laughing, oblivious to Lena's desire to retrieve the object. This amuses her. Roxy declares that it's time for her sister to face the truth. Perhaps she has forgotten that it was thanks to her older sister that she had lived a beautiful life, and therefore, she owes her a debt of gratitude. She confronts Lena, questioning how she dared to approach her in such a manner. The earring is taken off. Roxy then waves it in front of the protagonist. Roxy assumes that the Viscountess is unaware that Lena has lost the jewelry that was given to her at the mansion. Evely questions his son's sanity and wonders why he sent him there. Lena, who has never been in society, argues that the girl is not a child and should learn to take care of herself. The Viscountess believes it is inappropriate to discuss this now, but the boy disagrees, stating that his mother doesn't need to worry so much because there is a reason why Lena needed to go there. Eden wants to tell the truth, but the protagonist asks her not to say anything to avoid upsetting her. Evely sighs and says that she won't worry if something were to happen to Lena. Eden thinks that she wants to be by the girl's side more than anyone else, but that place is reserved for someone else. The parents are still overly concerned about Lena. Lena asks her sister if she believes that everyone in the world is as evil as her. This angers the older sister, who questions what the little girl is doing and if she realizes who she is talking to. Roxy claims that the girl lacks respect for her elders. Lena states that not everyone will resort to stealing, no matter how difficult life is or how desirable material possessions may be. The furious older sister hurls a glass of wine at her, only to realize she has hit the Duke of Cornwall instead. She blushes, apologizes, but the Duke reassures her with a smile that he loves the color red. The protagonist ponders if it was intentional, as he couldn't just show up like that. Lloyd winks at her. Roxy apologizes for not greeting him earlier. Lena's sister mentions he probably doesn't remember her, and the Duke introduces himself. He recalls the girl as Roxy Hollywood. Lloyd inquires about an engagement with Despenser's son, but someone interrupts. The Duke of Cornwall turns to see his friend Felix embracing his future wife, informing him that Lena Despenser is his girlfriend. He leans towards Lena, expressing regret for being late. The boy hints at having much to say, but decides it's not a good time now. Roxy observes the trio, pondering her sister's association with the Duke. Lloyd notes the lovebirds' reunion, while the older sister is relieved she's met Lloyd. She wishes Lena wasn't there. The girl, with clenched fists, turns to leave, but Lena stops her. Felix suggests leaving Roxy, but the protagonist insists on finishing what she started. As she runs off, the two boys are left behind. Lena rushes after her sister, calling out her name. Roxy turns back, annoyed by the interruption. Lena should definitely choke on it because it's already lodged in her throat. Suddenly, the Viscountess makes her entrance, calmly strolling over to the jewels and claiming them as her own. Ellie questions if that's the reason for all the commotion, noticing the tears in Lena's eyes. The woman gazes at the earring, questioning if it's the cause of the conflict, and confirms that Lena is also missing a dress. The Viscountess asserts that Roxy is determined to reclaim all the gifts she bestowed upon her daughter. It dawns on Roxy that Lena wasn't lying, prompting her to defend herself. She insists she wasn't lying and that the girl willingly handed over everything. She interjects, labeling Roxy not just a thief but a liar as well. The woman declares she's seen enough and promises that all stolen items will be returned by noon the next day. Evely embraces his daughter, forgiving Roxy solely because she's Lena's sister.